Welcome to the second video in Module 3, where we're really talking about reprogramming our subconscious mind for success. Now, today we're going to talk about some of those paradigms, those thought processes that have really held you back. Listen, it's not your fault. It's not your fault that you're not seeing some of the results that you really want to see in some of these areas in your life. You have a subconscious programming. As we begin to reprogram that subconscious mind, it's amazing how our results begin to change. And so let's jump into the module, and as we do, make sure you smash that like button. That helps get this video out to as many people as possible so we can really spread the good news. With that, let's transform our thinking, let's transform our results, and jump in to Module 3, Video 2.
So each one of us has a comfort zone, and it's ironic that we call it the comfort zone because atypically our comfort zone is really not all that comfortable. Now, no growth happens in our comfort zone. That's the normal, that's the routine, that's the day-to-day where we're not stretching and growing. So when we go to create a vision, when we go to really begin to live in our purpose, we're going to have to step outside of the comfort zone and get into our area of growth. But here's what happens. There's always a gravitational pull back to the familiar. Remember, your brain's number one job is to simply keep you breathing. So any change, my brain can say, you know what? This change could have an effect on my life, so to speak. And so there's always going to be this gravitational pull back to the familiar. For that, we simply call a paradigm. It's a thought process. It is a habit. It's that pre-programming that we now have in our subconscious mind. And it's these paradigms that often really keep people from living a life that they truly do love. It's the paradigm, the thought process. So having a paradigm doesn't mean we're bad people. It simply means we're human. We all have paradigms, and we're all just at different areas and levels of growth. Our goal here is never perfection. Our goal is simply growth. But we really want to understand how these paradigms are affecting our life. So let's take a look at some different areas in which these paradigms really do have a pretty major effect. The first area is perception. How do I really perceive the world? So let me kind of give you an example of that. Right now in this studio, there's lights, there's a camera, there is editing people, there's our entire space. And so I'm perceiving this space in a certain way. But the moment I do this, I've now completely darkened the room. Now, did anything in the room change? Absolutely not. What did change is my perception of it. And that is a paradigm. It is like looking through a lens. When you go to make decisions or the way that you see the world, those decisions are just not made neutrally in this exact moment. The decisions are made based upon 30 years of experiences. Your brain is saying, every time I've come into this situation in the past, this has been the outcome, so this is the decision that you should make. We don't make decisions based on a completely neutral circumstance. It's based on years and years of experience that we've had in our life. So then when I go to evaluate something in my life, to evaluate a decision, I'm actually looking at it through a lens. Now, someone else can have a very different lens, a different level of experience. For example, let's say you get into a disagreement with your spouse. You both can be right in your own eyes. It's those times when you never can really see eye to eye, simply because the perception is different based upon a set of experiences. And those experiences are really a program within the subconscious mind. Another area that the paradigms have a really big effect is really on the use of time. And there's two specific paradigms here that I really want to kind of illustrate because these are big ones. The first one is the procrastination, or we call that a delay paradigm. It is the tomorrow I'm going to, or next week I will, or next month I'm gonna. Next year is gonna be my year. But if nothing changes, obviously nothing changes. But we always have a justification why now is not the right time. Let me give you an example that I'm going to tell on myself. I'm growing like everyone else. A few years ago, it was about a week before Thanksgiving, and my training partner said to me, Steve, we need to change our diet around, and if we change this and we do that, we can get in better shape and those types of things. And the first words out of my mouth, without even me thinking, was, well, Thanksgiving is next week. I'm thinking I want to eat some pumpkin pie, I want some stuffing and some mashed potatoes and gravy. And so my thought process initially was that delay. Let me go ahead and put that off a week. But what would have happened if I would have continued down that thought process? At the end of Thanksgiving, I would have said Christmas is only a month away and Christmas parties start at the beginning of the month. And then after Christmas, could have said, well, New Year's is right around the corner, and then my birthday's in January, and I can keep delaying and keep delaying and keep delaying. The only time we have to create change in our life is in the power of the now moment. I cannot go back to yesterday and do something different, nor can I somehow float into the future. I have this now moment, and I have to get decided that I'm the person that's doing the thing, and then I have to anchor that decision with some form of action step. Everything else other than that is simply a delay. Now, another paradigm that really falls under this area of usage of time is distraction. That I get focused on something that I would love. I get focused on an area of my life that I really want to make some change in. And it seems like everything pops up to kind of pull my attention away. Let me give you an example of how these paradigms have a tendency to kind of come up. Let's say I want to lose 10 pounds. And I'm laying on my couch eating bonbons, watching Days of Our Lives all day. Well, there's no paradigm coming up because I'm not doing anything to move in the direction of my dream. But the moment I say, you know what, I'm going to get up and go to the gym, now it's, well, I'm tired. I've had a long day. I can go tomorrow. So that's when the distractions come. That's when the delay pops in. And there's all kinds of distractions around us. It might be social media. It could be the phone call you get as you're walking out the door. So we want to be careful of the delays and we want to be careful of the distractions. Now, an absolutely huge paradigm that affects a lot of people is that self-talk, the negative self-talk. Matter of fact, science tells us that the average person spends 76% of their waking moment having some kind of negative internal dialogue. It's the, am I enough? Am I good enough? Can I do it? What if I fail? What if people laugh at me? Am I really qualified? Could I be a coach? Who's going to listen to me? I'm not perfect. Some of you that are even watching this video are thinking, I'm to module 3. I'm, halfway through this and I'm not seeing the results that I want. And the paradigm is going to come up and say, you know what, let's just quit this thing. Or, I don't really have time right now. I'll put this off for a couple of weeks. The paradigm is always going to try to pull you back to that comfort zone so you're not going to see the results that you want to see. So we have to push through those paradigms and continue on in spite of current situation, circumstance, or condition. So we can even look at that from an opposite direction. So obviously the negative self-talk is going to have a negative result or a negative impact, just like positive talk has a positive impact. In the medical community, more than 30% of all medical treatments actually are just a placebo effect. You've all seen the science on the placebos, that someone takes a sugar pill and they, their symptoms begin to clear up and they begin to get better. It's the same thing from a negative perspective as well. Since we're in the medical field talk here, if you would like to maybe drop a few pounds, here's a nice little trick to kind of trick your brain. Is you can actually take some form of a label, a sticker, and put that over your scale with your ideal weight. So let's say you weighed 150 pounds, but your ideal weight is 130 pounds. You're going to write 130 on that sticker and cover up where the scale is kind of reading your number. And then weigh yourself a lot. Weigh yourself multiple times a day. And every time you look down at the scale, you're going to see that you weigh 130 pounds. See, your subconscious mind doesn't know what's real versus what's not real. When you get into a thinking process, if you laid back and said, man, I'm in Hawaii, and you closed your eyes and you visioned on being on a beach in Hawaii, you can produce an emotional response. You can produce a chemical response in your brain because your brain does not dictate the difference between what's really happening or what's just happening in my brain. So we can actually fool our brains. So going back to this scale, if every day, if you did this for 30 days, you weighed yourself, let's say 3 times a day, and you keep saying, I'm 125 pounds or I'm 130 pounds, whatever that ideal is for you. And I keep telling myself that, my brain is going to force my body into a consistent nature. Your brain does not want to be out of alignment with the body. And so what happens is you'll have your food cravings will begin to change a little bit. You might feel a little bit more inspired to go for a walk. Not that you've intentionally decided to lose weight, but simply because your brain is beginning to believe it's at its ideal weight and it's going to force that to happen. So if you grew up anything like I did, you heard statements like money doesn't grow on trees, or money is the root of all evil, or Steve, don't ask for that. We can't afford that. You know we can't afford that. So what does that do? That puts a subconscious programming of poverty, of lack. And so as I moved into my adult life, and by no means am I blaming anything on my parents, people only know what they know. Everyone's at a different level of awareness. I had to bust through that paradigm before I ever began to really generate real wealth in my life. So my question for you is, what paradigms are really holding you back? What are some of the things that have been roadblocks to keep you from really producing the results that you want to produce, whether it be in this area of financial freedom or in other areas of your life? Another area where paradigms really have an effect in our life is on our creativity. And it's quite often I hear people say, oh, I'm not a creative person. I don't really have much creativity. You actually have a mental faculty known as your imagination. We're all creative beings. Einstein said this. He said that imagination is more important than knowledge. And if you'll pay attention to that imagination, you'll discover everything you need to be fulfilled. Several years ago, I was wanting to open up another business outside of the personal development world. And I just didn't really know exactly what it is that I wanted to do. And I even remember reading that quote from Einstein himself. And I kind of just got quiet with myself. And I really began to kind of debate on what it is I want to do and allow my imagination to go. At that time in my life, I was really heavy into the keto diet. And if you're not familiar with the keto diet, it is basically a very, very low carb diet where you're going to burn fat instead of burning carbohydrates. And I was in Mexico at the time, and of course in Mexico there is a taco stand on absolutely every corner. And I love tacos, and my biggest disappointment about the keto diet was the fact that I couldn't eat tacos. And I kept telling myself, I cannot eat tacos, I cannot eat tacos. What is that? It's a thinking process. It doesn't mean it's true or not true. It's my paradigm, a belief system I had that whether it was true or not is irrelevant to the fact that that is a belief system that I was holding. And so one day I was kind of sitting around and I was thinking, I'd really like to be able to eat a taco. What if I could eat a taco? What if I could eat a taco and still stay in ketosis? Is that possible? And so as I began to change my paradigm, I began to change my thought process, I began to ask myself different questions. It just kind of came out of the blue and hit me. What if I could invent a tortilla that didn't have any carbohydrates in it? And so one of my staff members was someone who loved to cook, and so I asked her about it, and can you make a tortilla with something other than cornmeal and such? And so she ended up helping me create a basically carbohydrate-free tortilla that would keep me in ketosis. So at the same time, I'm still thinking my imagination, my business. What's my business? I happened to be in a health food store a few days later, and I was talking to the owner, and the owner was telling me how so many people in that community were on the keto diet, because I was always going in there asking for different keto products. And I said to her, what if you had carb-friendly, keto-friendly tortillas? You think those would sell? And she said, of course they would. They would sell like crazy. I would love to be able to find something like that. And I told her, I have it. How would you like to sell my keto tortillas? And there launched my keto business, all out of just using my imagination, getting out of my paradigm, getting out of my limited thinking, and really just opening up to expansion as to what can really happen. The last area that I want to talk about as to how these paradigms really affect our life. This actually comes from one of my clients who I've worked with for quite some time. And when she originally came to me, her area that she really wanted the most work in was in her relationship quadrant. She had great relationships with her family and friends, but she really hadn't met her soulmate. And so as we began to work, what was amazing was her other quadrants began to flourish very, very quickly. She wanted to increase the size of her business, which doubled in not very long period of time. She wanted to lose a few pounds. I think in our first month, she actually lost like 20 pounds, if I recall correctly, but still hadn't really met that right person. And so through a little bit more work and really kind of discovering what was going on in her relationship quadrant, she met the most wonderful guy. And so they began to date, and she thought, Steve, this is it. This is like my man. I mean, I finally really met this love of my life. So they dated for 2 or 3 months, and things had been going very good. And all of a sudden, there began to become kind of a downturn in their relationship. And when we were talking about it, I said, well, what's kind of going on? And she said, I've noticed I've been kind of nitpicking lately. I've almost been looking for something to criticize or looking for, something that's wrong. And so as we begin to talk about that, the kind of that self-sabotage, this is a huge component of how paradigms work. She began to hit what we call an upper limit issue. Think of your life this way. Think of your life has a thermostat on it. So let's say in your living room, you turn your thermostat on and you set it to 70 degrees. And as the temperature begins to rise and it begins to get over that 70 degrees, that thermostat is going to kick on the heater and it's going to bring the temperature back down to the 70 degrees. That's kind of how the paradigm is, and it's directly related to how deserving you feel. So oftentimes in life, when things get going good, we'll hit kind of a limit because internally we've said, I deserve this much happiness or I deserve this much success. And so what you might find in your own life is you're going to come up and kind of hit the ceiling, and that's the paradigm. It is a thought process. So in her case, what I had her do is just begin to journal. Begin to write down everything, how you feel about relationships. Go back to your childhood. What was the relationships that were exemplified for you? And through this journaling process, she was able to discover a belief system about really her own deservingness, that, how much she really deserves. And it didn't come out in her business so much in these other areas in her life, but it definitely was coming out in her relationship quadrant. Joel Barker actually wrote a book entitled Paradigms, and he said this in the book. He said, if you want to change your results or you want to change your life, you have to be willing and able to change your paradigms.
I trust that you enjoyed the video. I'll tell you, if you got some value out of that video, make sure you smash that like button. And right here, hit that, and it'll take you to the next video in this series.